Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm here tonight representing the Progressive Caucus with the progressive message. I'm hoping I can get the assistance of some of our very able pages who are seated in the back to grab my boards and my setup materials to help me along the way tonight. But the main idea is that the Progressive Caucus offers a progressive message, Madam Speaker, every single weekend. And this week, tonight, we are very, very pleased to be able to talk to the American people about the credit card holders' Bill of Rights. Everybody knows for the last several years that our economy has not had equal and open access to everybody. American people struggling hard, flat wages on average for the last number of several years, and we've seen people's pay remain flat as other costs increase, such as health care costs, higher premiums, higher co-pays. We've seen these kind of things. The American worker has been suffering, and it's been tough out there for everybody. And what happened with the collection of higher costs and higher expenditures and flat pay is that Americans began to rely more and more on debt to meet their basic expenses. We're not talking about living extravagantly. We're talking about the basics. We're talking about a home that you can live in, raise your family in. We're talking about trying to move into a decent school district. We're talking about trying to have a house that's large enough for your family to live in, things like that. And so at this point, we're here tonight to talk about a triumph that the American people have had tonight with the passage of, let's bring them down, the American credit card, the American Credit Card Holders Bill of Rights. So let me just get started. I want to thank our pages. We can't do anything without them. Very sharp, able young people. I'd recommend to any young person that they look into becoming a page. But I want to thank them. But I want to start off by talking about tonight. And this is our progressive message. And this is what we do every week as we bring a progressive vision to the American people. The progressive message. That's what I'm talking about tonight. And this is on behalf of the Progressive Caucus. And for people who are interested, we urge you to check out our email address. Send us some information. We want to hear from you, the Congressional Progressive Caucus. So again, tonight we want to talk about the importance of subprime lending, credit card holders' Bill of Rights, debt in the American economy. Americans having flat wages, increasing costs of all kinds, and people needed somewhere to go. Where did they go? They went to debt. They went to credit card companies. They went into the equity in their homes as they would take out home equity loans or refinances, things like that. What did people do to make the ends meet as they needed to make purchases that they simply couldn't afford because of the flat wages that they suffered through? They did other things, like sometimes go to payday lenders and even sometimes had to resort to other sorts of means. But what ended up happening is that as Americans began to rely more on debt, is that they began to experience negative savings rates. Negative savings rates. What does this mean? This means that if you get paid every 2 weeks, on the second week, sometime around Wednesday or Thursday, you got more week left, but you got no more paycheck left. That's what that meant. And that meant that you had to do something. Cutting back is what people did. Of course they cut back. But when you have food to pay for, mortgages to pay, things like that, you got to do something, and people relied on debt. 2005, 2006, we had a negative 1.5 savings rate, negative 2%. And I remember when I first got elected in 2006, asking one of our more conservative testifiers at a committee hearing what he thought about our negative savings rate in America. He said, don't worry about negative savings rates. We got to recalculate what we mean by savings. Equity in your home, for example, is savings. Well, we now know, looking back from 2009, what that meant. But I want you to know that even though the American people have suffered through these financial difficulties, even though we had to rely on debt, the American people made a decision that was in their best interest and decided, the problem is we don't have good policy for our country. We need better financial policy that is more responsive to the needs of consumers. We need better fiscal policy that really invests in our infrastructure, puts money into people's pockets, increases job, and spurs demand. And this Congress, in the 110th Congress, starting in the 110th Congress and in the 111th Congress, has done this. Now, I don't like partisan politics, but I do believe in the truth. And I just want to point out that these difficulties that the American public has been going through, going into debt, taking on loan products that are difficult to afford, the American public really didn't want to get into this, but look how things changed given the different changing political reality. This chart, subprime lending, Republicans controlled Congress during all this period, 1996 right up to 2005. All this area, Republicans are in control of Congress. But in the shaded area, they're in control of the White House too. And what do you see? And also on this chart, you see subprime mortgages starting at $100,000 up to $700,000, and you see time on the bottom axis. And what is this line doing? It's going up. You see, during Republican control, when we had no regulation, when we had an irresponsive Congress, when we had a Congress that wasn't listening to the American people, you saw subprime mortgages go up. But we've begun to fix this. We've begun to work on this. We've begun to act quickly, and today is an example of what I'm talking about. The Credit Card Holders Bill of Rights, which I hope to talk about in a moment. But during these years where the Republicans had both the White House and the Congress, this shaded portion, what happened to subprime loans? They just kept going through the roof. As a matter of fact, since the Democrats got in control, we've begun to see a lot of action. But during the Republican control period that I mentioned about, 1996 or 95 to 2006, the Republicans, when they had the White House and the Congress, put out past zero in the area of financial regulation. Republican scorecard, GSC, that means government-sponsored enterprise, and subprime legislation, nothing. They did nothing. Now, people don't like this sometimes because it's like, well, oh, you're being partisan. Well, I'm not trying to be partisan. I'm just trying to be honest.